Yeah, it's just that I was trying to think of a clever joke for like, what was it? Alpha Gal. I was like, oh, it's going to be a good joke for Alpha Gal, but I couldn't come up with it. To quote a friend of mine, Ninja Dan, who was a former member of a ninja cult, a Vegas musician, and is relevant to the context of this quote as a martial arts instructor, quote, I have good news and bad news for you all. The good news is that people are fragile and incredibly easy to break. Let me guess, the bad news is that you are easy to break. The bad news is that you are people, exactly. If you're wondering what's going on, Kevin writes it, I read it. That's the format of the show, we're jumping in. It was certainly an interesting way to introduce people to what they would probably be learning and possibly experiencing in his class, but it's also absolutely true. Even if nobody is actively trying to harm you, our bodies are incredibly fragile and prone to breaking for little to no reason. I don't know, I feel like our bodies are pretty strong. I know, like, obviously if you're in a plane crash, you're gonna get all sorts of f***ed up, but it's kind of amazing how strong we are. Like, the amount of weight, like, we can lift, the amount of things we can survive, like car crashes. We just survive these days. It's like there's airbags, they catch your little weak human body. But really, it's like you're going from like 100 miles an hour to 0. It's kind of impressive that we survive. Sorry, I'm under the weather, if you couldn't tell. But I've been under the weather for like 2 weeks. I've got this cold that just won't leave. And I had to record some videos, so here I am. All right. But that's kind of expected when dealing with something so complicated. It doesn't help when you get older and everything just... Oh, there is a man painting my window right now. He can definitely see me. Hello! Just carry on as if he's not there. They're renovating my building, and he's literally outside. He's literally painting right now. He's painting the outside of my window frame. This is the weirdest it's ever been. Hell, a friend of mine had to get a hip replacement in his late 30s, and he was in the best physical shape of anyone I know. Oh God, I'm in my late 30s. 37, is that still mid-30s? Please tell me it's mid-30s. It's probably not his late 30s. I don't want to get a hip transplant. I mean, I would if my hip was f***ed up. But mostly I just don't want my hip to get f***ed up. Oh, shush. Still banging on those prison bars. There's prison bars. And once you get the brain involved, instead of just being a physical injury, all bets are off. Our stupid brains are so complex that we only have a vague idea of how some of it works, and arguably our brains barely work as intended. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 8 people globally is living with some sort of mental disorder. I'd wager that at least 6 of the other 7 are too. They just don't want to talk about it. Yeah, I would say so. Like 1 in 8 have just one mental disorder? Oh, please. In short, humans are mentally and physically weak, and life is just a race to see if we can make our bodies fall apart completely before we succumb to the nightmare that is dementia. Oh God, yeah. Like, one of my grandparents had dementia. It's horrible. But some people's, they're dead now, fortunately. I mean, fortunately. Like, honestly, the last few years of their life, it's like, this. You're just waiting for them to die, and they are waiting to die. Not that they're particularly aware of it. It's horrible.
I can't take it anymore! I just want to die! We all want to die!
But some people's bodies break in much more interesting ways than others, so on that cheerful note, allow me to introduce you to some of the most bizarre medical anomalies in the world. Sudoku Seizures. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of Sudoku, and who wouldn't be? Oh, what could possibly be more fun than games involving maths and numbers? And if your immediate answer to that question was sex, well, as any pickup artist will tell you, that's just a numbers game. Life is a numbers game! For anyone not familiar with Sudoku, who the fuck's not familiar with Sudoku? I once, like, I can't remember where it was, but I was...
Bing, 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 bong, 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 bong. Get those lights off! Bing, 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 bing.
I think I was traveling. This was a long ass time ago. For some reason, I was playing Sudoku with a group of people, and we're all playing the same Sudoku puzzle in a race, and I just pretend to have never played Sudoku before, even though I spent the last 6 months of my life dominating Sudoku and getting really good at it. And I'm like, wait, so all the numbers just have to like add up to 9, and all the ones in the 9 square have to add up to 9? Have to be 1 through 9? I'm like, or how? I'm not even describing Sudoku correctly, but I do know how to play. And I just pretend to be completely ignorant of it and then absolutely crush everyone. And from that point on, they just think I'm some sort of math savant. And I just found that really funny. I'm such a child.
Fascinating tangent, Simon. Let's carry on.
For anybody not familiar with Sudoku, the general premise is very simple. You have a 9x9 grid divided into 9 3x3 boxes. The goal is to fill the grid with the digits 1 through 9 such that each digit appears in every row, every column, and every box exactly once. The difficulty of a puzzle is generally determined by how many digits are given to you at the start. And also by how many guesses you have to make. Not guesses, but like when you can't be certain, and then you have to assume, okay, let's pretend that's a 3, and then you play the puzzle out, and then you're like, it wasn't a 3, and you have to go back. Those are like the turbo difficulty ones. Also the most rewarding to solve. There are all sorts of Sudoku variants where instead of being given digits, there will be other clues in the puzzle like thermometers, crop key dots, arrows, skyscrapers, chess move constraints, yin-yang constraints, killer cages, modular lines, parity lines, German whisper lines, and tropical. What the f*** is being talked about? Oh my god, I don't know any of these things. Regions, sum lines, and more. And whilst they can only be played on a computer or phone, there are even Fog of War puzzles where, just like in a League of Legends or StarCraft game, the entire grid is covered in a fog of war, and you have to correctly guess, and you have to correctly place digits in order to reveal more of the grids, and any clues or give a digit hidden beneath the fog. I have no idea what the f*** you're talking about, Kevin. I don't know any of these rules, I don't know any of these games. I f***ing know how to play Sudoku, Kevin. That's it. And I've heard of chess. I know how to play chess. I'm not good at chess, but I know how to play chess. Even without seeing any of these puzzles, or knowing what all of those additional rules actually mean, just listing the names of those rules is enough to get a lot of people a headache, and Sudoku headaches are actually a relatively common problem. Of course, the phenomenon isn't limited exclusively to Sudoku, as people can experience headaches from crossword puzzles and other maths or problem-solving puzzles. I do the crossword. Oh, god damn, I'm an old man. I play the New York Times mini crossword in bed every morning. Like, my alarm goes off, the first thing I do is play the crossword because I feel like it wakes up my brain to like get me, you know, ready for the day. And my goal is always to solve it in under a minute. I think my record's like 34 seconds. You're just like, boom, yes! And that's like where you know all the answers and you're just like, yes, please.
Boring.
Basically anything that makes somebody think harder than they're usually capable of. What were limited exclusively to Sudoku were the seizures experienced by one German man beginning about a decade ago. A 25-year-old college student was enjoying a relaxing ski vacation when he suddenly found himself buried beneath an avalanche. Although he was rescued, what I can only assume is extremely quickly by avalanche standards, he was still buried long enough that his brain went without oxygen for 15 minutes. God damn, that's a bad time. Although the patient was revived, depriving the brain of oxygen for that long is enough to cause permanent damage. Muscles in his mouth would spasm when he spoke, and the same would happen in his legs when he walked, but at least his arms were completely unaffected, or at least that's what doctors initially thought. When he was in rehab, the patient decided to occupy his mind for a little bit by doing some Sudoku puzzles. This caused him to experience clonic seizures in his left arm, which is a repetitive jerking motion. We assume it was clonic seizures anyway, but I suppose maybe he just lied about the seizures because he didn't want the doctors to know how much he enjoyed Sudoku. Oh, Kevin!
Naughty, naughty.
Oddly enough, this reaction seemed to be restricted almost entirely to Sudoku. Reading, crossword puzzles, and most other math puzzles didn't result in seizures. An MRI scan showed that Sudoku resulted in extremely high levels of activity in the part of the brain that deals with visuospatial tasks, and the electrical impulses were basically leaking from that part of the brain to the part that controlled his left arm. He stopped trying to solve Sudoku puzzles, and the seizures never returned. Although it was it's very specifically allergic to Sudoku. I know it's not an allergy, but it's weird, isn't it? Like my weird allergy. I'm allergic to grasshoppers and nothing else. Although it was a bizarre case, this is all part of a phenomenon known as reflex epilepsy. The most common form of reflex epilepsy is photosensitivity, the type that would cause a bunch of Japanese school children to get seizures from watching Pokemon. Are you joking? I literally just recorded a Today I Found Out video about that, like, an hour ago.
Hey, you! Get off of my property! Now!
But the triggers can be seemingly endless. In other patients, these seizures could be triggered by reading, playing games, taking a bath, or even very specific music. In a case from 2008, a woman from New York began suffering from seizures whenever she heard the Sean Paul song Temperature. If you don't remember how ubiquitous this song was back then, it was bad enough that she actually had to have part of her brain removed in an attempt to control her symptoms. Holy shit. What the porn headaches! It's not just the mental exertion of things like Sudoku that can cause headaches. Headaches of countless different causes. Anything from allergies to being too hot to having to listen to anonymous idiots all over the internet pretend to be experts about things they know absolutely nothing about. Well, Kevin, people do that on the internet. I never experienced that in my life, and definitely not in the YouTube comments of every video that I ever make ever. Oh, Jesus Christ, the internet. Not that I would ever accuse any of the big brains in the comment section of this channel of doing something like that. Except I will. The arseholes do it all the time. But another cause of headaches is physical exertion, which includes sex and masturbation. It's estimated that about 1% of people suffer from sex headaches, and that the majority of cases occur in men. Wow, that's super unfortunate for you. Of those, about 40% suffer headaches from other physical exertion as well, though for the remainder it is specifically sex and masturbation that causes them pain. Honestly, this seems really strange to me. Even though 1 in 100 people isn't particularly rare, it's been my experience that sex and masturbation are a great way to cure headaches, not to cause them. Yes, like, what the
Are you trying to have sex with me?
Regardless, it is a common enough phenomenon that the first sentence in a 2018 paper published in the journal Clinical Neurology and Neurosurgery read, "The headache associated with intercourse or masturbatory activity is a well-recognized clinical entity, but pornography headaches is barely mentioned." It's at this point, well, surely it's the physical action of it rather than the specific thing you're watching. Because if you're having it during sex and while, jerking off, it's not going to be about the porn, is it? It's going to be about the whatever part of your brain's funny from the sex activity. It's at this point that I should probably remind you all to go and patronize the sponsor of today's video, because I'm pretty sure Simon could give us any AdSense goodbye. Sorry about that. Yeah, probably. It's really sensitive these days. I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. I just make the videos that I want to make, and sometimes they don't get monetized. It is what it is, all right? It hurts my capitalist heart a little, but I enjoy making this. But it's true that porn headaches are barely mentioned in academic literature. Aside from that 2018 paper, I can only find a single other paper on the topic, which was published back in 2012. The 2012 case had a lot more details about the unnamed patient, so we'll focus on that one. The patient was a 24-year-old unmarried male software professional. Of course he was. Which checks out, because that is exactly the sort of person I'd expect to spend all night gooning. Gooning is a word that I only recently learned. Whenever he attempted to watch an adult video, he would immediately start developing a headache within the first 5 minutes. By about 8 to 10 minutes in, the pain would peak with what he described as severe exploding pain. And the only way to make that pain go away was to shut off the videos. What is going on in your brain? Doctors checked for all other possible causes of this level of headache, including diabetes, hypertension, or migraines. The patients also did not get these headaches from sex or masturbation, and with everything else eliminated, that meant that the cause of the headaches had to be the movies themselves. What could possibly be doing this?
There's so much porn! You sick bastard! Look at this! Oh my god! Oh my god! I have a disease, alright? I need help!
Now, on the one hand, I get it, as paying attention to the plot of an adult film would make anyone feel like they were having a brain aneurysm. Adult films have plots? Seriously, why did you order that pizza if you can't afford it? Since when has someone breaking into your house to rob you and possibly kill you been considered sexy? Why would a woman leave bottles of MILF glue lying around her house everywhere? What the fuck are you watching? What the fuck's MILF glue? These plots are enough to drive anyone insane. That said, the patient did at least get to give himself a happy ending. Doctors advised him to take 400 milligrams of ibuprofen and 500 milligrams of Tylenol prior to watching erotic content, and it worked to prevent the headaches. Unfortunately, researchers are no closer to identifying exactly what biological mechanism was causing these headaches, nor do they have any clue how common they are. In fact, the 2018 paper even suggested that the prevalence of these headaches may be underestimated because overuse of painkillers is such a problem worldwide that many people might not even notice that they suffer from this condition. What, people are just constantly taking ibuprofen and Tylenol? No, they're not. I mean, look, right? I know America has a painkiller problem, and that's because people are abusing, like, opioid drugs, not because people are, like, taking ibuprofen all the time. Or Tylenol, paracetamol in Europe. Like, what? We're not that, are we? It's not like, oh, I didn't know I had a headache because I'm constantly dosed up on the wickedness that is ibuprofen. Gluten Psychosis. I've heard of this one. There's been a rise in food allergies over the course of my lifetime, and nobody's really sure why. Over the past 2 decades alone, the prevalence of peanut allergies has increased 350%. And that was after already tripling in the decades prior. God damn. Maybe all the people who were, like, allergic to peanuts in the past just died. Like, they got, ejected from the womb, and their mum's just, in the hospital ward having a snack of some salted peanuts, and it just gets rubbed on the baby's, like, raw face, and the baby dies, you know? And so all the people with peanut allergies were just dead before they ever had to bother us with their no nuts on plane problems. Just joking. I love people who have peanut allergies. They're the best.
What happened to this peanut butter?
Well,
We've reached the point where roughly 1 in 50 children is allergic to peanuts, which is a mind-blowing figure. Shortly after I finished high school, the town where I grew up instituted what I felt was a draconian ban on all nut products in public schools. It seemed insane to me because I was led to believe it was because of a single person with a peanut allergy, but 1 in 50 is a lot, so I actually get it now. Though the numbers haven't quite been as dramatic, we've seen similar increases in gluten intolerance as well. In the past 50 years, gluten intolerance has increased 400%, but that's also only the cases we know about. Unlike a deadly nut allergy, which is pretty obvious, a lot of people suffer through the gastrointestinal difficulties of gluten intolerance, assuming that it's just normal. It also comes in different forms, be it celiac disease, wheat allergy, or a non-celiac gluten sensitivity. Yeah, a friend of mine had this. And he was just like, yeah, dude, I was just living my best life, just doing it, you know, carrying on. And then suddenly, anytime I ate anything containing gluten, I'm shitting my brains out. And it's just, my tummy is on fire for hours. And then like a couple of years later, he's like, dude, all good. Now he's just fine. It's so strange.
Right then, buddy. I'm going to shit yourself.
There's a correlation between non-celiac gluten sensitivity and psychiatric conditions such as autism, depression, and schizophrenia, but why or how these would be related remains unknown. However, in one case of a woman with celiac disease, it was clear that gluten was the cause of her psychosis. This case involved a 37-year-old PhD student from Massachusetts. Shortly after beginning her PhD program, the woman began suffering from psychotic delusions. If you've ever seen the movie The Game, starring Michael Douglas, incredible movie, go see it if you hadn't. That's what she believed her life had become. And if you haven't, it's a great movie, so I highly recommend it. Kevin and I, same page. Short version is that she felt there was a conspiracy against her, and everyone she interacted with, be it family, friends, or strangers, were all acting out scenes for her as part of some sort of elaborate game. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after making threats against her family and was placed on antipsychotics, but they did not help. However, doctors noticed that she had other symptoms that were indicative of celiac disease. They advised her to stay away from gluten, but she ignored their warnings, believing it was just another part of the conspiracy against her. Dude, this paranoid schizophrenia or paranoia or whatever it is, I'm terrified, dude. Because it's like something's gone wrong in your brain and now you just believe this. It's f***ed up. Despite the doctors not actually helping with her psychosis in any way, the woman was released from the hospital. She went on to lose her job, become homeless, and attempted to take her own life. Why the f*** did they release her from the hospital? She's clearly not okay. At that point, she was again admitted to the psychiatric hospital, and this time, doctors were able to place her on a gluten-free diet. This was just meant to benefit her physical health, but once she was off gluten, she returned to being a sane person. Over the course of her hospital visit, the woman accidentally consumed gluten on multiple occasions, and each time it happened, her psychosis would return. That's crazy.
Hey, Bobby, look, I'm American. Do you guys have anything non-dairy? Anything gluten-free?
They recognized what was now a very obvious link, and once the effects of the gluten wore off, the patient was able to understand that her behavior was being caused by gluten. The doctors even had a possible explanation of how. Celiac is an autoimmune disease that causes the body to attack gluten the way it would attack an unwanted foreign body. This causes inflammation in the intestines and a very bad time. In the case of this patient, the doctors believed that it was the immune cells that were escaping in the intestine and making their way to the brain, where they caused inflammation that in turn caused the psychotic behavior. That's f***ing intense. The body is wild, dude. The brain is wild. The patient was a bright woman who was studying a PhD, and doctors had kept her off gluten long enough to explain what was happening to her. She certainly understood the problem and did not want to go back to that place, as she put it. She even agreed to help the doctors study her condition by consuming gluten in a controlled environment so that they could study her body's reaction and better understand exactly why the symptoms were manifesting. All in all, it sounds like this story should have a happy ending. Unfortunately, there was that whole bit about her accidentally eating gluten several times while in the care of the doctors. That was when she was in a somewhat controlled and monitored environment, so once she was released back into the world, she predictably wound up eating something with gluten by accident again. This led to her being arrested and charged with attempted murder after she tried, but fortunately failed, to kill her parents. Oh my god. Can you imagine going somewhere, it's like, no, I'm gluten intolerant, and they're like, oh, sure you are, and it's like, no, literally, I will try and kill you if you give me gluten. I will enter a psychotic rage, and I will try to kill my parents, these lovely people sitting here, I will try to kill you, and everyone else in this restaurant. And I have guns.
Sorry, I'm allergic to gluten. Gluten.
At first, this was believed to be a bizarre and isolated case, but another case was documented a few years later of a 14-year-old girl with non-celiac gluten sensitivity suffering from gluten psychosis. In this case, it was believed that a leaky gut allowed gluten to cross the intestinal membrane into the bloodstream, where it then crossed the blood-brain barrier and caused psychosis beyond reasons. That part isn't really understood yet, and this mechanism is still just speculative. It's bizarre that something as mundane as eating a bowl of mac and cheese could trigger murderous psychosis in someone, but personally, and rather selfishly, I'm now looking forward to writing my first episode of the Casual Criminalist that features the gluten defense. It's gonna happen. Like, that woman, I'm assuming she got off on it, like the woman who attempted to murder her parents, because she's in psychosis from eating gluten. But goddamn, load that up in your defense playbook, lawyers. Red meat allergies. Even though lots of people throughout history have chosen to be vegetarian for one reason or another, it was always seen as a choice. A bad choice. The idea that someone could be allergic to red meat never really seemed like a possibility, and the first confirmed cases of such an allergy weren't reported until 2009. What makes this allergy so bizarre is that for all intents and purposes, it's not something a person can be born with or acquire over time. The cases where a person independently develops an allergy to red meat are so exceedingly rare that they may as well not exist. You're more likely to survive clinical rabies than you are to suddenly develop an allergy to red meat. Wow. And no one survives rabies. And yet, despite this, it's estimated that as much as 3% of the population of the United States has a red meat allergy, although that number is largely a guess and the number of confirmed cases is only a little more than 100,000. Wait, so how is it you're more likely to survive clinical rabies than you are to suddenly develop an allergy to red meat? I don't get it. But if developing such a condition is so vanishingly rare, how is it possible that so many people suffer from this condition? Okay, good, Kevin, you're going to explain it. I was confused, like I'd missed something. The answer is the Lone Star tick, or in Europe, the castor bean tick. It's not guaranteed to happen from any given bite, though it's more likely from a Lone Star bite. But the saliva from these ticks contains a compound that can trigger a condition known as alpha-gal syndrome. Of course, since the only symptom of this condition is an allergy to red meat, a more apropos name would be beta-cuck syndrome. Yeah, I was trying to think of a clever joke for, like, what was it? Alpha-gal. I was like, oh, it's going to be a good joke for alpha-gal, but I couldn't come up with it. The actual name comes from galactose alpha-1,3 galactose, the specific carbohydrate found in red meat that causes the allergic reaction. What makes this condition so bizarre is that not only is it bordering on impossible to have a red meat allergy without being bitten by these ticks, but it's the only known instance of an allergy being caused by a vector. Because this was such a recent discovery, little is known about it, and there is no treatment. Fortunately, it seems that the symptoms can subside over time, so some people are able to consume red meat again eventually, though the process generally takes years. God damn, would I miss red meat! I love red meat. I know it's not good for me. I even take cholesterol pills because my cholesterol's so high, but now my cholesterol's so low, I bring on the steaks, baby. Yes! I got a nice fine T-bone salting in the fridge, ready for consumption tonight. I think it's like 60 days aged. Yes, please! There is a silver lining, though. The carbohydrate alpha-gal is only found in the tissue of mammals, so you can still eat all the fish, poultry, and alligator you want. I find duck breast is a reasonable analog, like rare duck breast, or even rare tuna is a fairly good analog of red meat. I mean, of course, it's nothing like as good as steak, but it's not bad. Even better, alpha-gal is found in all mammals except primates, so you're free to gorge yourself on human flesh without fear of an allergic reaction. Oh, thank God! I was worried for a second! Bring out the Chianti! But that's kind of expected when dealing with something so complicated. It doesn't help when you get older and everything just...
Naughty, naughty!